Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where by now you know we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And today, my guest is Cody Pettengill, who I met. Cody, I'm trying to remember when. A couple of years ago. Oh, pre-pandemic? I don't even know. Time flies. Sometime. Cody was working
Yeah,
with his mom, who is an artist, and she was in a group with me. I actually did some painting sessions with your mom. Um, Paint and sip. Maybe too
yeah.
many sips and not enough paint, but I don't know what. But Cody, I first met you there, I think, and we've crossed paths since. Cody now has a business called Sublime Exposures Films, where he does wedding videography, but he's kind of a Renaissance man. Cody, would you say that about yourself?
Definitely always been an artist, and we finally found our home run. It's going really
Nice.
well. So,
Nice. So
um, m-
tell me about you. Tell me your video, but you said you've always been an artist. So where did Cody Pettengill come from?
cool, deep question right
I
off
know,
the
right?
bat.
Let's
Holy
just
cow.
hit it right off the top.
We're taking opening the blinds, letting off the veil, as they say in the weddings.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. My mom, I worked with her for a long time, and Jody, I don't know if you know how much I love my
I
mom.
can tell how much you love your mom. She's an amazing person.
So we're starting it off with I'm a mama's boy right off the bat.
I love it.
That'll be my opener here. But yeah, we painted for the last I did that for like 7 years full time or 5 years full time, 2 years part on either end. And wow, I really learned some super interesting things about psychology because I wasn't even a painter when I started that career or whatever you want to call it. I was an entertainer.
Hmm.
And I realized that, man, people who work in healthcare or in the schooling systems or legal systems or who run teams need ways to connect, need ways to let their own guard down and actually start being authentic. They needed a kind of a safe space. I don't know. Is that
Yeah. No,
too
that's
soft of a way to
exactly,
put it?
if you've heard any of these podcast episodes, that's what we talk about all the time. If you don't
Yeah.
feel safe to be real, then all we're doing is masking up and hoping that somebody can see through that, as you said, the veil to what's really behind it. So yeah, absolutely.
And so when you ask like what is Cody Pettengill, the beginning all the way back to my Batman origin, actually I would say that that's kind of my number one value is like an individualist is what I even would call myself. We did because I worked at Hatch Realty, shout out Eric Hatch, doing video for them for a long time, and they take personality tests, and that was my number one strength finder. Strength was individualist,
Ah,
and in order to be an individual, you have to be very real.
yeah, you
And it
do.
sounds like I'm contriving this, but that's like my number one value
Yeah.
actually. Um, so I don't know. It goes all the way back, but that's been my base value for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
So
So you
honored to be
kind of,
here, flattered to be here.
well, yeah, and what's cool about that is when you know yourself that well, it sounds like your parenting, allowed you that. Your mom's
Mhm,
creative. I don't know your dad, but she's creative. She's
mm.
found her spot, with now she's doing her own painting. We should shout out your mom. What
Oh,
is she doing
yeah.
these days and what's she up to?
Well, if any of you
Shanna.
guys are in the Fargo area, you might have heard Creatively Uncorked. You might have painted with me. We might have done some sipping and painting in that order. And so Mama's doing a bunch of competitions now, watercolor, acrylic oil. She's just refining her skills as an artist. This will be my turn to champion her as I think she should do essentially this get real,
Hmm.
a deeper version of painting and sipping, not just being authentic for 2 hours, but I think she could really help people find themselves through art in a very meaningful and long lasting, impactful way. And so that's what I urge her to do next. But right now, she's just mastering her skills and continuing creatively uncorked.
Yeah.
Painting and sipping.
Shanna, you wanna tell who she is? Tell her
Yeah,
name.
Shanna Corby, Shanna Kramer, is who she married into, and yeah, if any of you guys have seen her around town at the chamber meetings or at the painting parties and stuff like that, that's again how I met Jody. So you guys probably already have some friends in common and
Yeah,
stuff.
we
But
do. That's awesome. Thank you for shouting her out because her work is beautiful. I'm watching what she's doing now. She's posting some of her what she does wedding. Is that connected to you? She did a live wedding painting?
yeah, she's doing a few of those now too, and I'm able to introduce her to our clients since we've only been in the game for 3 years, but We're doing 45 weddings per year right now. And in photography, that's like that's double what a photographer normally does. And we're doing video, which is like way more intense.
Yeah.
So we're just getting our reps right now, and anywhere that I can like bring my mama along, I'm gonna do that as well. Um, Jody, so I guess my origin for wanting to be real, I want to, and I want to put the ball back into your court a little bit, but my grandpa, one time, I got in trouble in middle school. Matter of fact, Jody, how real can I be right now?
You go for it, man. This is what we're all about, having conversations that matter with people who matter. Let's get in.
Wow. All right. So I just want to unfilter here. And
Yep.
so in eighth grade, I was hanging out with a bad crowd. I was in like the classes on the side of the building, like with all the troublemakers and
Yep.
stuff
Yep.
like that. It started off because I was hard of hearing, and they would put me in like special needs classes and stuff like that. And I became a multiple six-figure entrepreneur, despite like everything that the cards were stacked against me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say largely, yeah, definitely because of parenting. And the actual person who doesn't get hardly any credit would be my dad, James, and and my grandpa. When I got into trouble, Jody, I was huffing axe
Mm-hmm.
in the men's locker room, the boys' locker room. We were
Yeah.
12. And my grandpa, I had like community service and stuff like that. Like, you get the little tap on the wrist. Don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's naughty. But my grandpa told me something. He was like, son, if you have to be hiding something, you probably just shouldn't be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh man, I have to like live life on my shoulder. Like I have to live life on my sleeve. I have to let everybody know that, hey, I want to be full on who I am and not hide any of it. And it's interesting. Today is a friend of mine's birthday who passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, September 18th. And that's enough indicators as to who it is. I don't need to go into it because that person passed away from an overdose less than a year ago, last January. And so I have made a lot of different changes in my life to get to where I'm at. It's a lot of little changes, day by day changes. Like in the morning, you do this instead of this, and then you don't die from an overdose, and instead become an entrepreneur and make films that last forever. Um, and that's all because I was real with my values and didn't want to hide the activities that I was doing. And so sometimes you have to disassociate from people who are hiding in the shadows, and not showing their real selves. And so that's how deeply of a value it is of mine. I lose friends' lives over it and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. That's it's a tough road to go down, but it's really essential that we talk about these kinds of things. This We've had these kind of conversations on Circle Up and Get Real, because my hope is what you do when you feel safe with someone is you sit around the fire and you talk about what's real. And so my logo is a flame, because I really do believe that it's about igniting that space in us that is real, that connects with other people's realness. And so your vulnerability, Cody, is admirable, and it's what is at this level.
Yeah.
So when you decided, because you had to decide, and I bet you have to decide every day, it sounds like, to go this way, not that way. Was there something that happened, some big event that happened that had you say, nope, I'm choosing a different path? Was it your grandpa?
Um, I would say that my grandpa gave me the principle to make the little decisions, and I would say because I'm a storyteller, right? You're looking for a character arc, is what we call it in our films. You're like, what was the defining moment? Interesting fact about that is the same pressure that makes villains is the same pressure that makes heroes. It's just which decision do you make in that moment of necessity?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that it was a specific moment. I can think that there's a few. I have other friends who've gone to prison, including the one who passed away. And so it had been a few years since we talked, but growing up, we played video games every single day. I was in a band with another guy, went to prison. And I don't know, I kind of I was a little too real, and I got kind of kicked out of my own friend group.
Mm,
And it honestly was super a great blessing because I didn't have to take them away one by one. I didn't have
right.
to rip the band-aid right off. Um, and so, wow, really great question. Was there a turning point for me? I can't really tell you, but those little decisions were
Yeah.
guided by a principle
Mm.
of wanting to be real. Um, I'm sorry, I don't have a particular
No,
moment to look.
but I love that answer because if I mean, I'm thinking if you got arrested or if you hit somebody while you were driving when
Mm,
you were drunk and somebody died, I mean, there's some big events that happen in
mm,
people's lives that are the crisis that it takes for them
mm,
to take a different path. But what you're reminding me of is something I heard from a coach many years ago, and she said we get information all the time coming at us to kind of
mm,
direct and guide us. We get messages, lessons, problems, and crises. If we don't get the message, we'll get a lesson. If we don't get the lesson, we'll get a problem. If we don't get the problem, we'll get a crisis. And then there's really no other place to go. So that's
mm,
why when I asked you, was it a big crisis? And what you said is there were probably messages and lessons all along the way,
mm.
which got to you before you had to get to the crisis, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a first world life, so any crisis that I would have faced isn't really worth crying over or spilling guts over. I did get basically in 2019, I made a YouTube video and I did kind of call out a girl who ruined my video. Like she was in the background, and it was a surprise Christmas party for me. And my fiance was throwing that party for me. That's like my love language. It's not necessarily the gift, and it's not even necessarily the surprise. Both of those things that I like, but it was the people that she brought.
Mm.
And so I was just like, wow. And in the background, there's this girl, she was in theater. And so I was like, I don't know if I was taking the stage away from her or what it was, but she was like literally making stink faces in the back of these surprise photos,
Mm-hmm.
where I was like, oh my God, I was having this crazy moment. And but it didn't look like a photo bomb, like she was being cute. Like she was actually really trying to, there was toxicity in her eyes. It was a very acidic pose. And so I made a video about it. I was like, hey, look at this. Look out for this. This. I'm glad I didn't have to deal with this person. This is somebody who doesn't want you to be happy. And this is something that you should watch out for yourself. I made the mistake. I didn't blur out her face in the video and I got straight up canceled. And it
Yeah.
was associated with a few other things too, from being in that crowd I was telling you about and whatever. But yeah, after I straight up like lost all my friends in a big exodus, and it just like literally the best thing never happened to me.
Mm.
Jody, I've made my whole life based on my charm. Anywhere I go, I just use a people skill to get what I want or what I need at a given moment. And because it's pleasurable, because it's fun, people love it. They have a great time. At a wedding this weekend, I was flirting with Grandma Peggy, and the whole family just melted. They were loving it, including me. um, but during that time of Exodus, I was like, wow, my people skills need to shut off for a little bit. Am I built? Do I have merit as well? What am I really trying to say here? And what are my ends? Because it was during that time of like Logan Paul, like blow everything up on YouTube. It was kind of edgy style content. And yeah, so for me, I just really wanted to roll back on the dial for that and see if I could be built on merit
Mm.
and make something that lasted instead of just charming my way into getting what I wanted or whatever. So I would say that if there was a defining moment where I wanted to have really, really clear values and who I did and didn't want in my life, that I was okay being authentic and comfortable around, that was a really pretty defining moment.
Mhm.
I was just scared to say it.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I think for many people, because this is kind of a next level conversation. This is a pretty deep self-reflection that we're having here. And that just shows me that you've done a lot of work because self-awareness, self-reflection is not something everybody takes on, especially somebody. You're young, Cody. I mean, my gosh, I'm friends with your mom. So you're young. You have kind of gotten to this place. It sounds like you've always been there, but you've gotten to this place through some not so comfortable you know actions. Yet I don't know, from my perspective, being real and reflecting and knowing yourself that well is worth any of the work that it takes
Mm.
to get there, at least to me. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, and if those little decisions, bring messages, warnings,
Yeah.
and even crisis, if you
Yep.
don't manage them, you're better off to avoid the crisis. But yeah, I think looking for a defining character arc, like, is there a moment in your own life that you would rather change before it happens?
Yeah.
Even having not just reflection but foresight too. It's like, what happens if you keep going down this road?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that a life that you actually want to live long term?
Mm-hmm.
Are those the people that you want to be around long term? Part of the reason for me too, this is a little bit of a pivot in topic direction, but one of my favorite things to do as far as being real is like this. It's that is where my charm comes from. Also, is being real, man. In a world of like polish and news and scarcity and urgency, and everybody's freaking out, man, if you go to the bank and you ask them how their day is, but or even somebody's like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, wow, I'm doing really well. How are you? Even just thinking about it and
Yeah.
then answering the question can elicit such a more candid conversation, such a more real conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying not to use the words that are already
Well, I
here, but
know. Yeah,
you've
it's
already
okay.
nailed it.
So real is an acronym for me, and it's
Mm,
radical, energized, authentic, and learning focused. So
mm,
what you're kind of touching on is the R. And radical in my acronym does not mean crazy, wild, out there. Oh my gosh, like radicalized you. When you come back to the word radical, it actually means root. It's the
mm.
root. A radish is a root vegetable. And so when you uncover all of the other stuff, the root is what's left. And that does seem radical because there aren't a whole lot of people that do that. And so what you're doing is demonstrating radical in my lexicon. So I love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. It's brought me it's brought me everything that I have in my life is
Yeah.
being real. So yeah, even just shaking people up in line when they're stuck in line. Like I was at the fair, the state fair, Minot State Fair this year, and there was some kids from the reservation who were acting very, very tough, putting on a gruff exterior and like spitting and using all kinds of slang and stuff like that. And I rolled up and I was like, "You boys afraid?" And they're like, "Well, what?" I was like, "The ride, it's gonna be crazy." And they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm scared." Oh. And then at the end of that, they were like, "Hey, have a great day, man. Like, thank you so much. Like, that was great to be on that with you." And we had just as much fun in the line
Yeah.
as we did on the ride. Just like opening room for people to. In fact, we went to Italy. Jody, stop me at any point.
No, I
I'm
want to hear
I'm
about Italy. This is good.
I'm figuring this out with you. So thank you
Yeah, yeah.
for the open floor. I can't believe how helpful this is. But when we went to Italy, man, there's not time to be filtered.
Mm.
In Rome, there's so many people that like here's an example: the coffee shop at the airport. You have to budge your way in line and bump shoulders at everybody, and then take your order. And there's a line for the. Sorry, I'm trying to mute my headphones. There's doggies running around.
Oh, I
Love my
know.
doggies.
Agreed.
But there's a line for the pastries and there's a line for the coffee, and you have to like wave your ticket and yell at them and like get
Wow.
your stuff. And it's interesting because even there was a lady in New York and she was like, I never seen nothing like this in my whole life. What do I just got to get in line and yell at them? I was like, yep. And and on one hand, yeah, that's just crazy. It's insane. In Midwest, somebody would be insanely rude for doing that.
Right.
But they're not filtering. They're asking for what they want. They're telling you that they need it now. They're like, hey, let's do it. When I came back, it's a little bit darker of a topic here. When I came back to the Midwest, the landscape was beautiful. The drive home, the sunset over the lake, the even the cornfields along the highway. I was like, man, our home is still beautiful. But the thing that I found had a void in it was like kind of the people.
Mm.
And I was like, we went for a walk the very next morning, and we're like avoiding drug paraphernalia on the side of the path by the river. And we saw homeless people not like just sleeping on a bench, but knelt over their own knees, resting on their own stomach with their head draped in shame. And I saw Here's really, really dark, and I apologize, but this is in Moorhead,
Mhm.
and it was a cat nailed to a railroad spike. And for me, who would do that?
Mhm.
Somebody who's really hiding what's going on in their lives. Somebody who's really, really filtered.
Mhm.
The Rolling Stones is like, I have to turn my head until my darkness goes. The people look at you weird when you're unwanted.
Mhm.
And it's like they're not expressing themselves. That is pent up. That is not being real. And and so when I see stuff like that, I even consider that being real as like it's like I try not to overblow things or hyperbolize here. I want to have it real, but I think it's genuinely how you save the world.
Mhm. Mhm.
And because there wouldn't be shootings in schools if people were open about how they were doing
Mhm.
and other people were open to receiving that message, and then we could work on it in plain sight instead of in the shadows, like my grandpa was saying,
Yeah.
hiding things that we don't want people to know. So it's my highest value, and
Mhm.
I genuinely think it's the solution to many, many of our problems.
Well, and I love that you are demonstrating. Again, I keep using that word because to teach is to demonstrate. And when we demonstrate, like in your work, your creativity and your openness and I have on my second screen here, I have your video playing, and I'm seeing how these weddings are expressed, and I'm watching the people in the crowd. I'm watching what you're doing in the videos, and it's so um, heart opening just to have that video going. So I know what you're doing, Cody, and I know what you're here to do. And I don't think it's too much to say this is how we change the world. I believe my mission is to help people connect, communicate, and collaborate. And if we do that, the world will change for the better. We're completely on the same page about that. So instead of taking on the world and saying, how can we make the world better? We do what you do. We're in line and we're connecting with people, and we're having the conversations that other people are avoiding. So good on you, because you notice it and you do it.
Yeah, if we take it a step further, even, and if I am hammering in this topic too much, stop me at any point. I
You're
warn you.
good.
In Soviet Russia, the way that I mean, it's always had its ups and downs as a country, historically, humans have in general, but the communist side of things where if you can get shot for saying anything bad about the dictator, so you're
Mhm.
not allowed to even say anything about this person who controls everything. um, it is basically everyone was conspiring together to create a lie, and it's just such an insane phenomenon that a lie can go so viral like that every single person can stop believing their eyes and start spewing something that is leads to genocide, millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of death. Like we have one family funeral, and that's like a low point of our year, but there was millions of people in Stalingrad, one battle, a million deaths, 900,000. And it's like, man, is because all these people were bought into this lie or supporting it out of fear. And there was nothing real going on there. Nobody spoke up and was like, hey, you probably shouldn't murder that family and pull them out of their depths where they're trying to hide from us. They know that's wrong. We know that's wrong. Why would we allow for that? It's like it's a practice. It's those little decisions of being real every single day, so that if something heinous does come up, you have the fortitude to stand up and say something about it as well. So
Well,
it literally is how you save the world.
it is. And I think your demonstrations and your examples, even of the gal in the video who you didn't blur out her face, we will never, in my opinion, we will never learn anything unless we make a mistake somewhere along the line and recognize that, oh, that wasn't the best thing to do. But I think to your point about Stalingrad and believing that this is what it is, it's all out of fear of what will happen if I do stand up, because then we start fighting against something and we bring all the energy to that which we fight against, and all we create is resistance instead of having a conversation with someone who might have a completely different point of view, experience, upbringing, and being curious about it instead of getting furious about it. I think there's a
Mm.
huge opportunity in that connection, because you said this from the very beginning. We're all human. We're all human. There's a connection just by our very nature of being human. And if we can be diligent enough to find that, that's where the world will change. And that's what I see you doing in your work. So, yay.
I have kind of one more analogy here as a gamer.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
That's fun.
and so we've been talking about my lens as a filmmaker or as an entrepreneur or just as a human. I'm trying to keep it pretty applicable. But as a gamer, we're always limited by our hardware. There was the Nintendo 64 and we finally had 64-bit. And we look back at that now and it's like these ugly polygons but still nostalgic memories either way. And then you try to run these older consoles because they don't keep them updated. With VHS, they ported everything over to DVD. They're porting everything over to Netflix. You can still watch your favorite movies. It's actually really hard to play your old favorite games now. They haven't put the same level of care. It's a more intricate medium. And what's happening is people have to emulate. They have to be an emulator. And in order to play Nintendo 64, you don't need a console that's as powerful as an N64. You need one that's like 10 times more powerful because it's pretending to be an Nintendo 64. And if we extrapolate that out and apply it to the human brain, which is like a biological computer, very similar, it's got its differences, but it's very similar as well. In order for you just to be last year's model, 10 years ago model, you have to be 10 times more powerful than it. Whereas if you are just who you are, you can actually unleash your own power instead of faking that processing. You just use the hardware that you are. If I think of somebody who's like, do you know Elizabeth Holmes?
Yes.
Female CEO, Theranos. Whole thing was built on this viral effect of social engineering, where she's like, hey, I got this investor to invest. You should do it too. Otherwise, we got 3 more to take your spot. And she was faking being a CEO and has like, she's in prison now, has billions of dollars of funding raised that is now just debt and or gone. And she was making a false product. She was idolizing somebody like Steve Jobs. She was pretending to be a Steve Jobs, but not actually having that. And I think if she would have used that power for good, she could have really, really rallied someone. And it's like, wow, think of the wasted potential there, where she made it as far as the top and then it was all just fake. The cards will be exposed at the end of the day. Time is the great equalizer. You can't hide. And so you might as well get it out there now and use your
Right.
energy.
So that's such a good reminder to everybody out there. And to me, the way I see the world is, if there were to be a dualistic way to look at it, it's love and fear. Love and fear. And fear takes on many faces. Ego ends up being because of fear. And as you said about Elizabeth, the ego of it was, I want to be Steve Jobs. I want to be better than Steve Jobs, whatever the story was. And you said the cards will be exposed at the end. So why not just be real from the beginning instead of thinking I have to be this? But think about all the pressures that have been on people throughout their whole lives who weren't raised like you were, who didn't have the grandfather you had. You mentioned the people you noticed on a walk, even in our community here, who maybe didn't have that opportunity. And the opportunity that we have, each of us listening to this, to again say hi in a line, greet somebody at a gas station. I mean, whatever it might be. I think I'd rather take that chance than even in Italy where somebody's yelling at you with your number. I'd still take that chance. I think you might too, to connect.
Yeah, it's super valuable, and most people are like waiting for it too. I use the analogy of being in line and sparking people up, but really we're just in line for whatever the next thing is. It's just how the brain works. It's like we're ready for the next thing to fire. And while we're waiting for that, there's tension, there's boredom. We check our phones for this proxy of connection, but it's not the real thing. And when you can do that, you can really like shock people awake. And they love it. They're so grateful for it. And that's you. If you're listening to this right now, are you awake? Are you listening?
Yeah.
And who can you do this for? Take a chance. Let it be random. It might be somebody that you don't associate with on a daily basis, and that might make their day twice as much. You'd be surprised how much these little compliments hold weight. If on one hand something can go poorly, you burn your breakfast, and then now your whole routine's ruined and you're super upset. On the other hand, it's like, well, what if somebody came along and told you that that outfit that you put all that work into and it looks so good, and you're like, you know what, I picked this out. This does look good. This fits me nice, and that can spiral the other way. And now you can start having an upward spiral of positive interactions, and then you pass that along. All the advertising and all the viral videos in the world aren't the thing that's truly viral. It's the human effect. And you can look at it because it happened long before technology as well, in the instances of like Stalingrad and Soviet Russia. And I don't mean to use those dark examples, but yeah, even in advertising, it's a principle. It's like your advertising only goes as far as your goodwill extends,
Right.
and how good you are with your clients and customers. And that's because your interactions in the real world are what genuinely count, not like a brand or a facade.
Right. So your work, that's a great segue to your work. Obviously, your work is in person. You can't do your work virtually as a wedding videographer. So tell me about that. Tell me about, you said you had 45 weddings that you're doing
This
video.
year.
What?
Yep, this year.
So
And
talk
doing
about that a little
photo.
bit.
So wedding videos. As far as like a product, we kind of stumbled onto it on accident. I always wanted to be a rock star. I was a musician growing up, played guitar, metal band, get real rowdy. Haley, my fiance, the other half of my business, was also a musician, classically trained, flutist, won awards in North Dakota. I was a painter, obviously, with my mom. We both grew up doing photographs and stuff like that. But I never quite like made it as an artist. I mean, painting parties and stuff like that were awesome with my mom, but that was always her business. That was always her product. And I was like the secret weapon. I was the party. But now in doing wedding films, it's been so interesting because it's kind of a new medium. You know, as long as photographs have been around, they've been a part of weddings. Weddings have been around longer than any of these things.
Right.
And it's interesting to look at the reasons why people get married and how that pans out in today's society. People marry back in the day for, you know, resources. They would combine families, and now we're all together in this tribe. Or they would do it to stop warring countries. It's like, hey, we have this union, we're sealing it with this marriage. They can literally bring countries together with this wedding medium. Or arranged marriages, which have a surprisingly high success rate, higher than our current American way of doing it by a lot. It's like 90% or something like that, as opposed to the American 50.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what are we doing wrong? Well, first off, our lifespans are a lot longer. So until death do us part is twice as long as it used to be. And then there's a lot of complications socially with children and media. And so we try and stay together for them, but we're marrying for love in this modern day. And it's like, what that's such a fleeting emotion, Jody. Like, I can love my dog unless it poops on my couch, and then I freak out, which, you know, it's been a very long time, different dog. But and yeah, and then, man, you get into this routine, and you even start to like hate somebody because they're a very similarly oscillating emotion. And so how can you keep love? How can you manufacture love? How can you, boom, bada bing, love, abracadabra, bring love? And the wedding, you know, weddings are a pretty opulent experience. You bring all your friends, you bring all your family, you feed everybody. There's music and dancing and drinks and ceremonies and makeup and dresses. And one could say that it's insane to like spend all this on a big show, because it's all about the marriage itself, right? But on the other hand, that is a sign of commitment. How much resource you put into standing in front of all of your friends and family, looking your best, showing that you're serious, like, hey, I love you. We will be together forever. And I'm saying it in front of everyone. With this person officiating us under God, this is my union forever, and we declare it. But we forget that on the day-to-day. When work goes poorly, especially if you're like a frontline worker and you see some hard things, because that's a lot of who our clients are, but they're reminded of their mortality. And so we might as well also be reminded of our love. And a properly done wedding film can help with that. Whether it's your actual words being spoken that photographs can't capture, or the music that we put together that brings the vibe of the day back to life every time you watch it, or if it's something as simple as a clip of your grandparents in the audience who are unfortunately no longer with us. Because I was able to do an interview with my grandma literally the last time I ever saw her. And I wasn't aware that that was the last time I ever saw her. She was acting like everything was okay. And so, yeah, I'm my own testimonial in this way. And I think if you guys are going to marry for love and we're going to do it the modern way, then you might as well go all out. You might as well remember it. You might as well have something to as a cornerstone to bring yourself back to. Photo is the institutionalized medium, and it does have its own. You can use it as a profile picture. You can hang it on the walls, but video is the one that brings you back to your wedding day. Video is the one that lets you hear those vows with that love in your voice. And I stand by my medium.
I love that. Well, you say right on your website, we are storytellers. So what you do in the video is tell the story of the wedding, the marriage, that you have the experience as one of your tabs. So I love that you said earlier about energy that's put into things that people don't recognize at the time. You can look back, we can all look back on our lives and go, yeah, that didn't feel right at the time, or that felt great. But we are so conditioned not to express our feelings or even feel our feelings. So I love that you're making it really obvious and evident here on your website to do that with wedding videos. So how would somebody get a hold of you, Cody, if they wanted to know more about you or your occupation?
I would say if anybody's interested in getting real with me, I'm on Instagram as Cody the P.
Cody the
My
P?
personal, yeah, my personal brand is very unpolished. But my company, if anybody who is getting married and you think that having somebody with them who allows them to be real on their wedding day and not just like a contrived video, contrived capture of their wedding day, real is my main value, and we try to bring that out on the camera as well. Then check us out on Sublime Exposures Films. That's Instagram, that's our website, that's our Facebook, Sublime Exposures Films.
I'll put that in the show notes. Cody, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to share? Because you've been really pretty vulnerable and raw, and I appreciate that here. So anything you haven't said?
No, I really appreciate it, what you're doing. I think I've spoken plenty, and in fact, I would say if we have the opportunity to do this again, I'd love to hear more from you. I really appreciate the fact that. Oh, I do have one more question. I didn't finish typing out the real acronym. I've heard you
Okay.
say it before.
Yeah.
Um,
Radical,
it's rat, boom,
energized,
bang,
authentic,
ah.
and learning
Eh,
focused. That means we're open to learning forever. If we have an
yeah.
open mindset, things will continue to unfold for us as we go through our lives.
Yeah, I think everything that I would have to say falls under that umbrella. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
But
thanks. Thank you. This has been a pleasure. And please, everybody, if there's anything you heard today that you'd like to have a deeper conversation with Cody, I'm betting, Cody, you'd be okay with having somebody reach out and do a Zoom call with him.
please,
Or please look at his website. And your fiance, when are you guys getting married?
we don't have a date, but we do have a ring, and
Okay,
we
so
just
we're
announced
we're
it.
moving in that direction, and nobody can capture your wedding video as well as you can, so that'll be a challenge, I bet.
A lot of logistics there. A lot of logistics there.
Awesome. Well,
But
congratulations on that. And thank you so much, Cody. I appreciate you being with me today. And everyone else, thanks for listening. And as always, get real. We'll talk again.